I mean, real estate is typically very formulaic, and you got to build it for this price. You're going to lease it to this tenant for this rate, or you're a hotel, and this is your demographic. They're going to pay this rate. Therefore, business model works. Like, it's just very for most, real estate is a statistical or a math problem.
What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is a real estate development veteran with over 15 years of experience in the Denver area and beyond. He leads hotel concepting, development, and operations through Midnight Auteur. His venture with the Ramble Hotel married his development experience with the hospitality industry in the heart of Denver. His Municipal Grand in Savannah, recently noted as one of the top 19 places to travel in 2026 by Architectural Digest. He's the founder and operator of the Ramble Hotel and co-founder of Gravitas Development. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ryan Diggins. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Good to see you.
You too. I've been wanting you on this podcast for a very long time. Actually, since I first went to the Ramble, I think it was shortly after you opened, because another mutual friend of ours, Dave Kaplan, and former podcast guest from the fame of Death & Co., really flipped the F&B experience with you at the Ramble Hotel, in my experience, by having you basically walk through the bar to get to check-in. So you're not only leading with F&B, you're really leading with the B. And I've written a bunch of articles on Substack that really resonate when talking about this. And I think it's really exciting what you've done in Denver, what you're doing in Savannah. And we can't wait to hear about all the other things that you have going on as you grow and scale. But before we do that, how do you define hospitality? What does it mean to you?
And then we'll have to get into how I got in touch with Dave years ago too, if he hadn't told you yet. It's a good story.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Dave would love it. If the more we talk about Dave, the more Dave will love it.
That's true. All right. So hospitality, how do I define it? I guess how we define it as a company is we're really trying to create spaces for meaningful connection and meaningful experience to happen. That's an art and a science, how you get there. And we continually try to study it and learn more about what makes a great hospitality experience. But that's really the root of it. It's creating a place for people to really have impactful moments with each other. That's how we define it.
And I think that by leading with the food and beverage and having that experience be the first thing you experience at the Ramble and also in Savannah, also Andrew Ashe, former podcast guest as well, and dinner mate. I had dinner with him up in Portland.
Oh, nice.
But it's interesting how you lead your developments to really mush the people together, whether they're guests or from the community. And I think that you probably, for a successful hotel, would need the community to want to be in that bar or restaurant experiencing it, right? To create the vibe. So yes or no?
Exactly. Yeah. You nailed it. I mean, when I, you talked about the development company, I owned a real estate development company for years, and we focused on a lot of like boutique urban infill developments, and they started to become very design forward. They all started to become really anchored with top food and beverage in Denver, some really cool soft goods retail. And I just found that how I was doing developments wasn't so formulaic, but ultimately what I really loved was placemaking, and placemaking with architecture, with design, and just bringing community together. And, here I'm in Denver, I'm at the Ramble, sitting in the Ramble right now. And the hotel is in the River North Art District. But really, like me even getting into hotels was having this understanding that a boutique hotel, when executed really well, it's the ultimate placemaking vehicle. You bringing in community members, bringing in outside travelers, having cultural programming. I mean, it's this like living, breathing organism that not many real estate vehicles can replicate. Um, so that's where it started with me. And then obviously the food and beverage is always so critical to bringing people together. So I was more thinking of it as a vessel. I was growing a little tired with some of the real estate development I was doing. I wanted more control of the day-to-day operations. And ultimately just, I had this like, uh, just this passion behind how do you create a vehicle to bring just energy to a building, to an intersection, to a neighborhood. But to your point, food and beverage is obviously always going to be a core ingredient to that.
But I also think it's a respect for community, aesthetic, and also bringing a certain perspective and taste to it. And I think that most developers in any format of commercial real estate, I think you just said that it doesn't happen as frequently. You're doing something unique. I think other developers can do it, but maybe they're not bringing in that level or don't have that level of aesthetic, the taste making and the placemaking, because I think it's a tremendously missed opportunity when you don't see what those important elements or buckets are and then use design to solve for that. And I think that I'm not familiar with the commercial developments you did in Rhino, or in Denver, but except for the Ramble. But it seems to me like when you can marshal those challenges and then really surround yourself with great design, you can solve for that and create these amazing places.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, real estate is typically very formulaic, and you got to build it for this price. You're going to lease it to this tenant for this rate, or you're a hotel, and this is your demographic. They're going to pay this rate, therefore business model works. Like it's just it for most real estate is a statistical or a math problem, and
Yeah.
while I understand that, and you have to because you got to make money if you're in business, I think me and perhaps some other, people who are really into creating boutique hotels, they bring a little more artfulness to it, a little more personality, a little more point of view. So like you can stay within that, whatever formulaic structure you need to make your business plan work. But I find there's a thoughtfulness that a lot of those projects miss. And I think why is consumers or guests, so many projects just don't resonate. Like, you're sitting in the formula versus like, a boutique hotel or a owner operated restaurant or these things. I mean, there's a point of view there. There's the fingerprint on the property, and whether you can identify what that fingerprint is or it just feels different. I certainly look for those things when I'm out staying or dining and drinking, and that's what we try to bring to the projects. And ultimately for me, with Midnight Auteur and our growth, I'm holding that up for every project. Do I have the time to really lean into this? Do I have the time to geek out over the lamp harp and how the brass is going to patina on the toilet handle, and like am I thinking about those? And if I can, then yeah, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And then if I take on too many projects and we get into that formula land, well, there's a million companies that can do that better than I can. So it's trying to, not that you asked about growth yet, but I'm always very mindful of that too, because these projects, to do it like we did at the Ramble or Municipal Grand and other projects, it just takes more time. Honestly, it's just more time to hit that level of thoughtfulness that I think you key in on.
Well, I think that's also the balance of every entrepreneur. And I'm going to say and I say this a lot. Entrepreneurs are not necessarily someone that start a business. An entrepreneur can be, or to be entrepreneurial, you can be anyone in any job and doing anything. But again, it's how do you create something with limited resources, right? And how are you as creative as you can with that? And it's working within constraints,
Yep.
right? One of the things that I want to dig into with you is, I think you said any development is really a math problem, right? So anyone can make a business plan. You can make that Excel spreadsheet pro forma work, and you can show profitability, you can show a rate of return, you can show all these things. And it's a puzzle. And I love business plans. I love projections. I love making the symphony work on that spreadsheet. but it takes, actually, I'm going to say, what do you think is missing for most other real estate development projects where, okay, it works, they build it, it performs, but how do you solve for that missing secret sauce, whether it's the patina or the lamp harp or the charcuterie board that I can speak from my experience when I checked into my guest room at the Ramble years ago. There's just like this certain level of thoughtfulness that is not magic. Anyone can do it. It's just you have to put focus and attention and importance to it. So how do you solve for that? And why is that missing from so many other developments, do you think?
Well, let me start with the latter. Why is it missing? I mean, one thing I've uncovered over recent years with hotel development is if you're going to have any project of scale, certain level of capital involved, you've got large loans that are personally guaranteed. The riskier the projects get, the more money that's involved, the more people that are going to want to be involved in the project. So, i.e., it's going to dilute what the original vision was because there are more people that have eyes on it and care what happens to it. So I think at scale, a lot of companies, I surmise, lose some of that secret sauce or that X factor is you just have more people involved. You've got more lenders, more investors, more businesses, more people that think they know. And we work with great partners, but everyone's got an opinion, and how qualified is the opinion? Like who's qualified to speak on what the name of the hotel should be, or what wood floor goes in, or do you have stuffed olives or not in your martini? Everyone's got an opinion on these things. So I think for me, my goal is to keep that scope of influence as tight as possible. Not to say we don't listen to other people, because investors and lenders and other business, everyone's going to contribute something that you're like, I didn't see it that way. But so it's just, what you want is the ability to hear other opinions, but ultimately the decision makers is me, Alex, Dave, for Midnight Auteur. And right or wrong, whether you like our taste or you don't, at least we can say, well, that's what the three of us were feeling at that time in that moment, and we aligned on it. So I think most projects, they just get diluted, and they get, these things take so many years to build too. So, from the first idea that someone was like, had this super strong vision to the grand opening party, I mean, God, it's 5, 6, 7 years, in resort towns, it's a decade, it's multiple generations. And sometimes you get so far away from that first idea that got everyone excited that you can't even like reference back to where it started.
Totally.
So I think that happens everywhere. I mean, God, just design a home, renovate a home with your wife or something, you just 2 opinions. What does that do? And then add 40,
Well, as you're speaking, I love thinking about things, because nothing is ever really binary, right? There's always a spectrum of possibilities, outcomes. And I always find whenever I start thinking down a certain way, or if I'm at like an impasse, I'm like, okay, it's either this or this, right? There's a black and white binary option. But the more I dig into it, it's always a gray area, right? And as you were speaking, I wrote down here, I envision a spectrum on one side being like an innkeeper or a B&B or some first-time hotel owner that's buying something and a lot of constraints, right? And on the other side of the spectrum, maybe like a big institutional REIT or something that's like really institutional. And I guess that's on the same spectrum, there's like a scalability model, right? And I feel like you're in a place, and you've created some places that, to have that influence and to have that impact and to build that community, it like presses up against scale, right? Because it's almost not scalable, but maybe it is. And I don't know. I feel like as you come up against that wall of scale, like what are the biggest headwinds you have? Because I guess what led to this renewed conversation with you was I saw you at Alice, you were on a panel, and everyone was talking about kind of F&B and leading with F&B. And I don't remember if I asked the question or I there wasn't time and I emailed you, but I feel like the traditional marker for hotel development, like where you get equity and debt, it's all about RevPAR and how much room revenue and profitability that the rooms can bring to a property. And I feel like it disadvantages many entrepreneurs in the hotel space, especially because when you do have that special sauce for the food and beverage and leading with the B, leading with the F&B, that revenue and that placemaking gets discounted. And it's almost like a handicap in many ways. But if you look at the Ramble, then I don't know what the metrics are in Savannah, but I remember the Ramble was given the Four Seasons down the street a run for its money because you created a place. But if you look at like valuations, I think a Four Seasons, a traditional Four Seasons might get valued differently than the Ramble, but you're probably maybe generating more cash flow. I don't know. Like I'm out over my skis, but it must make your investor and from equity and debt, it must make that different and challenging experiences. So I just threw out a word salad because I'm not like a finance guy. Like, what are your thoughts on everything I just vomited out on you?
Yeah, try again. No, yeah, you hit it. I think you hit it. What I hear a lot is, are you a restaurant or are you a hotel? What scares investors is actually the revenue split. They're more comfortable seeing room revenue at 80% of total revenue, maybe 20% of the operations coming from F&B, because F&B is typically more fickle, a tougher business to run. It's just not as reliable as your guest room. So we're like in Denver and in Savannah, we're closer to 50-50 food and beverage to hotel revenue. So that just that signifies to investors that, well, are we in this might be more of a restaurant than we were planning on investing in. But then what we counter with is, well, look at our RevPAR that you mentioned, your revenue per available room. Look at our market penetration relative to our competitors. You know, this food and beverage is driving higher RevPAR for us by a wide margin. I mean, the Ramble, since we've opened, this gets into star reporting and competitive set analysis, which not everyone would understand. But, you know, our RevPAR index has been like 1.4, meaning we're getting 40% higher revenue per available room than our competitors. And that's a direct result of having Death & Co. in our lobby. You know, it just is. It's not because we have pretty guest rooms. I mean, that helps, but it's the food and beverage. But the other thing that we're trying to focus on more when we talk to different investors now is not RevPAR, it's rev per square foot. So that's a better metric for just how much revenue is your property producing. Who cares where it comes from? Yeah, hotels have higher margin than food and beverage, but let's look at the total picture. Is our revenue per square foot much higher than, let's say, a Thompson hotel? I would surmise yes, because we try to optimize every square foot of our properties as a revenue producing entity, not just a couple chairs in the corner that no one ever sits in. It's like if we're putting a piece of FF&E in our project, we intend someone to sit down and eat and drink in it. So we're and we need to service these spaces. So we're just more into optimization of you know, our floor plates, our program. And I think that revenue per square foot starts to tell a little different story rather than just focus on RevPAR. But yeah, it has been an obstacle. But as you get into the numbers more, you know, most conventional investors are used to seeing your restaurants as an amenity for your hotel guests. You know, ours needs to be a profit generating enterprise. So we can point to those things too when people really want to peel it
So
back.
speaking of, like, if you were to go to a traditional lender on a new project that you were doing and you're really leaning on the F&B because you have a proven track record, a proven process and success, what are, and it could be not just a lender, but equity investor, what are some of the objections that you might hear from them on one side of the coin? And then on the other side of the coin, if we were to talk to investors from your past deals who are not might not be traditional, how would they, like, what testimonials would they give? Like, oh my God, this is like a home run. Like, how do you balance those on a scale?
It's just pointing to the numbers, honestly, because again, most lenders, most investors are used to seeing food and beverage as just an amenity for hotel guests. That's a huge drain on the property cash flow. I mean, most don't make money. Break even is typically a win for food and beverage within a hotel, and most lose quite a bit of money. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars just to be able to get that hotel guest a breakfast. And my pitch is always look at these as standalone thing. Assess our food and beverage just as food and beverage. Look at this model. Okay, well, it's making this revenue. Here's our profit margin. Would you agree that this is a good standalone business idea, just this food and beverage concept? Okay, great, cool. Now let's look at the hotel as a standalone, and then let's put it all together. And our thesis and what we've been able to prove is independently they perform great, but then you put it all together too, and our profit margins are higher than most of our competitors because we've put so much thought into that food and beverage, which again performs well independently, but drives rate, as we've talked about before. It's a vehicle for press, for marketing, for rate, and for guest experience.
And that's from the operating model once it's there. But I also think you can also, from the project, I don't know the deal metrics on the Ramble and in Savannah, but another margin of safety that helps with profitability is how well you buy, right? And I feel like you're always on the search, always on the hunt, looking for that right thing that most traditional people, the spreadsheet developers, might miss the opportunity for that secret sauce. So tell us how the buying side of things helps with your margin of safety and overall performance.
Yeah, I mean, again, as a former hotel outsider, I was always told that smaller hotels can't make money. So if you look at the Ramble is 50 rooms, Savannah's 44. These size properties typically aren't viewed as hotel opportunities. So on the buy side, I'm able to look at urban infill sites or existing buildings like Municipal Grand in Savannah that we've recently opened. It's a city municipal building, vacant city municipal building. There's no solve for that. That building had no solve. Too small for multifamily. Office wasn't big in Savannah. What are you gonna do with it? So it's more so we've got a unique little value proposition for what can go in those walls, which allows me to look at different real estate deals a little bit off center, and because they're off center, you're able to sometimes target better deals and better opportunities because they're not these things that are just so classic, a classic multifamily building, a classic hotel site. So that's where I found the opportunity in these like flyover opportunities that just aren't hitting people's radar. And that's not to say we always want to do 44 and 50 room hotels. That's been a product of our own capital, in our just, fetish for boutique hotels. But we'd love if we can get to the 100 room hotels and 125. I mean, at some point it becomes more transactional, but it allows us to see opportunities where perhaps others don't. And we've proven that those sacred cows of, you can't make money with 50 room hotels. If you look at the Ramble, most investors have just been shocked to see what we've been able to do. But that's only if you can get big ADR. You got to get a real high rate. Otherwise, no, you can't make money. So we're looking at markets and opportunities too, where if we execute what we think we can deliver on, there is a market and perhaps an untapped ceiling for what we might be able to get in terms of hotel rates.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info. There's also this idea, like in that secret sauce, one of the things I really appreciate about you and Alex and Dave is all of you have these secret sauces, but you're also out there evangelizing about them, because anyone can now, like, just using Death and Co, like, they published all their recipes, right? They have everything there, but no one, it's so hard to replicate because there's something missing of someone else just taking those recipes and opening a bar. And I have a feeling it's the same thing with you in the hotels. Like, what is that? What is the, I don't know, that glue or that needle going through the thread, or through the eye of the thread going through the eye of the needle? What is that thing that, like, you're out there evangelizing, you're publishing all this stuff, you're talking about it, but what's keeping others from doing the same thing?
I don't know if I've got a killer answer for that other than, again, letting your point of view work its way through the project. So I guess if you like the Ramble Hotel and you like Municipal Grand, that's implying you like my point of view on hospitality, on design, on programming, on the types of people that we hire, the types of people that we attract to work for us. You like our brand aesthetic, so it's just kind of, I guess that would just be a compliment to myself and Alex and Dave. What is our X factor? We're just an amalgamation of places we've been, things we've experienced, and then we're, putting it back out in the world. So,
But I think you're all, as I'm hearing you say that, I also think that there's this level of like laboratory.
sure. Yeah.
You guys, I get the feeling, are still doing it. And that's where, you talked about the time. What do you have the time for to make the biggest impression? It's like, all of you are so involved in the projects that, like, you see your fingerprints on it, literally. Right. And I think that as you rub up against scale, or you like, if you try and do 1,000 hotels in the next year, like, that's going to get diluted. But,
Sure.
like, how do you find that balance of continued growth, but also having your fingerprints and your passions kind of flow through each project?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, we certainly do study this. We're all fairly well traveled still. We're when we see new hotels, open, we like to visit them, new bars and restaurants. I mean, there's inspiration all around us. So I think we're still all doing that. So at the point we stop being curious about the world of hospitality, we probably shouldn't be doing this anymore. But we certainly take notes when we go, what we like, what we didn't like, why we felt how we felt at a certain place. That's certainly, with the Ramble Hotel, that influenced so much. I mean, I couldn't miss on this first hotel. So anytime I'd go anywhere, eat, drink, hotel stays, I would really thoughtfully reflect on my stay. Why did I feel inspired when I left this place? Why did I feel kind of homesick when I was at this place? Why did I feel more confident here? Why were my stories better there? Like, I really tried to dissect the emotion of a stay and why I felt a certain way. And I still do that quite a bit. You start to, like, you tune that antenna to, like, I was at a restaurant with my wife the other day, and God, it was so great. And it was a Spanish tapas type restaurant, but the restaurant was hot. The air conditioning was out and they had fans blowing, and we just had such a great time. And I was like, it felt like you were in Spain. It was warm, sweating, instead of having cold air conditioning blowing on your face and drying out your eyes. Like, that must have been 84 degrees in there. But, we're having olives and sardines, and I don't think they were doing this intentionally, but it very much felt as though you were in Spain. And, the condensation on the wine glass, and it just sort of put us at ease, and we sat differently in our chairs, and we stayed longer than I thought we typically would have. And so I'm always thinking about those things, like, fascinating. It felt more up place due to the temperature. And so we're just always thinking about that stuff. And then how do you, you bump into scale, like you said, how long can you do that for? How long can you truly create boutique type properties? I don't know. I mean, you read about a guy like Ian Schrager, or Andre Balaz, some of these guys, and or Liz Lambert, they still appear to be very involved with the things that matter to them: design, branding, menu creation, stuff like this. So I don't see it being a problem, honestly. The bigger problem is the type of project you commit yourself to. If we could have done many more projects than what we've done. We've turned down a lot because we would have been involved with a larger corporate entity that was incredibly formulaic with how they approach things. And you could just tell based on how meetings were conducted that it just wouldn't be the great fit. You could tell they were going to take the soul out of it.
No, they would turn you into a spreadsheet, right? They would
Yeah.
basically take that, and then that's when you lose the magic.
Yep. And just question every, needing to scrutinize every last goddamn decision that will just kind of wear you out and take the fun out of a project sometimes and by the way, we're very systematized too. I think sometimes there's this element of, well, if it's boutique, it's non-structured. I mean, we're technical. I mean, talk to the team members we just hired in Savannah, and the meeting cadence and structure and our SOPs and the communication.
I think you thank me for that in a roundabout kind of way, because I think I introduced Dave.
You did.
To Traction. And it's so good to see how that's benefited everyone.
But, with that comes some pitfalls too. So I've been very mindful with Savannah. In Denver, I live next to Ramble. So I've been able to be a different owner and director of operations in Denver than I am in Savannah. But I'm very mindful of the fact that, we're kind of meandering now, but corporate structure is great, but it can also hinder the property. It can hinder, they're not sitting in front of their computers all day. They're dealing with guest issues in Savannah. So if you put them in too much of a box, those same things that I just said can crush my spirit, can crush that team's spirit. Well, can you give me an update on so-and-so and what happened with the sump pump ejector that you said you were gonna get back to me to? Like, no, they're just solving things in the problem. Like, so you got to find a cadence there too.
But I know you say we're meandering, but I think that the meandering is part of the process of how you find that balance for the places that you've made, right? Because I heard this one guy once say, like I think it was a process or a standard operating procedure or a process can kill the customer experience, but they're also critically important. So how do you develop those and talk about them and keep evolving them so that they become like nuanced, so that the process or procedure is more of a guideline, right? Because you don't want to like strangle yourself with the process. And finding that balance, again, I think it ties back to what you said a couple times, and I can't do it as elegantly as you, but it's like, where do you have the most impact? Where can your fingerprints be on it? What's the best use of your time to have like an asymmetric, more positive outcome for the guest experience, the employee experience, and the investor experience, right?
Yep.
And I don't know, I think a lot of that requires conversations and exploration out into the horizons. You also said something, I don't know if it was in the last conversation or when we talked, I don't know, a month or two ago, but it's something to the effect of, when you're doing these projects and all these touch points, you're thinking about the most highly, I think you said like actualized guest, like the guest that can't be fooled, right, by authenticity. And then, but somehow if you're doing that for them, that authenticity kind of flows through the entire rest of the project. And even the guests that might not be the most highly actualized, they get to share in that experience because you've been so thoughtful about that experience.
Yeah. That's the standard we try to hold ourselves towards. Everything sort of looks the same nowadays. I feel like the industry's changed in the last 10 years. Instagram was around 10 years ago, so was Pinterest and all that, but just the way that algorithms work now and how specific you can create a collage of design and experiences that you want as a developer now. So imagery isn't everyone chases imagery now. So that's why a lot of projects start to look the same way. Um, for us, it's the emotion. How's it going to make you feel? And when you talk about that highly actualized guest, it's really thinking about the guest journey of someone who's just so incredibly opinionated on the fabric on the couch, the glassware that the martinis served in, the clarity of the ice, the acoustics, the thermostat, really just the incredibly picky people, but because they're well informed, not nitpicking, but just, you're well traveled, you've seen it all, you've got an expectation, you're well read. How do we create spaces for those people? And I think that leads us to be very, very thoughtful with selections. Everything's got intentionality behind it. And really that's the true north. And one of our core values is thoughtfulness. And that implies with, everything we put, it applies to everything we put in the building. If we can't answer what is this here for, or why are we doing this? Well, now you're just a Pinterest board. And it's funny when we do our own internal exercises, when we share imagery. I mean, you've seen a lot of these presentations, Dan, I'm sure, but you see imagery to communicate what the project's going to be. What we challenge ourselves to do is, why'd you share that photo? Like, what about that picture are you communicating here? And sometimes it'll be me, Alex, or Dave, or someone else. It's like, oh, that was the fringing on the pillow in the corner off there that we liked. We liked that it had or we liked the piping on that pillow on that couch. That's what that image is. Or, our director of food and beverage will share a different thing. What are you keying in on here? Oh, I love the stem on this particular, so I think a lot of projects don't go about it that way. So like when we are building these things as a team and we're sharing imagery and inspiration, it's getting very, very granular, and everyone that's talking about better have a strong explanation of why they're advocating for such a thing to go on the project. And I think that ultimately gets you towards that highly actualized guest, because everything's defensible from some design or functional angle. And then, when you go down the pipeline of maybe someone who just picked your hotel because you were a rate at an address on a specific day, well, maybe they're not walking around looking for the same things, but we still hope there's some subconscious emotional thing that's going on there because we designed it so specifically for that, that very special traveler that walked through the doors.
Yeah. But you know what I think, again, where this all comes from? And I think I don't know if there's ever been a study on this, but I think it would be really interesting, where values for a company anyway are often just like a poster on the wall of people rowing a boat, and it just doesn't mean anything, right? And for you to share that thoughtfulness is one of your values. When I think of Dave and Alex, I think of how their values translate into the companies that they've created. And it requires revisiting those values and updating those values. And maybe it's not a complete change, but they continue to evolve. Like you said, that I don't think you said the boutique world or the independent hotel world has kind of become the same. Okay, everything kind of merges or regresses to the mean at some point, right? If there's an arc, but it's up to the leaders to continue to evolve and change their values as the market changes, as the guests change, as the company changes. And I just get the feeling that values are often missed in those traditional developers who are, okay, their value is a return on investment. Great. It's a financial product, but it's those other core values, I think, where the fingerprints and the patinas make all the difference.
Well, and I think, as we're talking through this, what it really does is it ultimately attracts a certain team member that wants to join your project. I mean, ultimately, the employees, the people you interact with when you go to a hotel, those are some of your greatest memories and moments. So that's a differentiator for us too, probably our biggest, because we're pretty steadfast and resolute in our core values and what we're trying to bring to the world of hospitality. You're then going to attract a higher percentage of people that resonates with. And it's not just, the more people that our mission, purpose, values resonates with, the more likely you are to get people that aren't just taking another job, that would just as likely want to be a server at, an AC Marriott down the street, or a bartender at, you name it. So I think that's been cool to see too, as we've sort of stuck to our guns with this, seeing the team members that we attract, which is ultimately what you need, because at some point we're not, involved in the day to day, obviously.
One of the things, I just had this conversation actually on, maybe it was yesterday or the day before, but regarding values. And I said, it's important to attract the right people, like guests, customers, employees. But as going back to that evolution and of the values as the market and everyone evolves, it's also important, I think, to check in with those values and update them, because if you look at the team that you attracted 10 years ago to the team as the company has evolved and the values have evolved over 10 years, sometimes the values change, but the people don't. Right. And sometimes it's also a good way to, give someone else the opportunity to try something else. Right. And I just think values really at a corporate level are just so critical and just often overlooked.
Yep. Totally agree.
If you were to think about bringing in, like pitching a new deal to an investor who's typically, oh, hey, I love investing in hotels, or I love Death & Co., or I love the projects that you've done. And you're like, okay, it's 50 or 60% of the revenue is going to come from the ground floor, right? From the food and beverage. And like of the objections that you might hear from a traditional investor, at what point does the filter or the switch go on that an investor, that light bulb goes off and he's like, oh, this, I get it, right? Who are those investors that make it over that hump?
Well, first off, I don't think the food and beverage would ever be 60%. We'd never get that high. 40 to 50 feels
okay. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Then you're what do they call those? They have some name for that type of a hotel. It's typically the ones that they've just looked at a lot of business plans, and they've looked at enough pro formas for boutique independent projects and seen outlier performance that they understand it. It's tough to get the conventional investors that are just looking at, Le Meridians and AC Marriotts and JWs and stuff like that. It's still kind of tough for us to get them over the hump. I think we need more hotels. Like the Ramble performance is, anybody that looks at those numbers, they go, holy cow, I've never seen a hotel that's hit these margins. But that's just one. So Savannah with Municipal Grand, our property there, that will prove that we're not a one-trick pony. We just turned a year old there, and we're really starting to see some great numbers in Savannah. So I think once that gets to like the 1.5 2 year mark, fully stabilized, no more what ifs. Now we've got 2 case studies where we should be able to convince most anybody that this is the model and here's why it works. But just since we don't have too many, it's a lot of explaining. So it helps investors that have seen those types of properties before and are familiar and actually seeking them out. But people are starting to really see the value. I think more and more are seeing the value, because a commodity hotel, I think, should scare any investor. A commodity hotel that, you really aren't going to get any press and marketing after you're open. You really just become a rate in a service. To me, that's the scariest place to be as an investor. If I'm an investor, I want to have no ceiling on where this hotel can go, especially if you're in a market that you believe in as an investor. Yeah. If you believe in Savannah, well, who's to say that our rates can't, who's to say Savannah won't be Charleston in 5 years? And who's to say that our rates couldn't be the Dewberry Hotel in Charleston? Could you see Municipal Grand as a 550, 600 ADR hotel in 10 years? Yeah, I can convince myself of that. But if you pick a conventional brand, you just can't. It's like, here's what it is. It's a pretty narrow, degree of what it, so it's just kind of risk reward tolerance too, for a lot of investors. We're trying to go after people that look at a commodity as a negative. I mean, we're not that company.
Yeah. I want to go back to thoughtfulness again, because as that's been playing around in my brain, I'm brought back. I don't know if it was a year and a half ago. I saw Andrew Ashey. He was on a panel in Boston, I think, talking about historic renovations, and he was talking specifically about um, Savannah, and he was talking about, I think it was like the tiles. There were all these historic tiles inside. Is that, am I
Yeah.
making that?
Yeah. It looks like the inside of a swimming pool. It's like
Yeah.
blue, gray, white mosaic tile everywhere.
Yeah, totally. And, but if some were missing because the building was old or whatever, like you had to find that exact replacement for it. And I think that that goes back. I keep coming back to the patina on the toilet handle for some reason, but there's that level of thoughtfulness that I think that you're able to achieve it. And Dave and Alex are able to achieve it because they really, truly invest in the design. And you too, like you invest in that team that is super thoughtful and can describe that nuance. How do you select your teams for design? Like what resonates the most with you on that thoughtfulness front?
Yeah, that's a good question. That gets into one of our core processes that I've certainly learned over the years. If we like to have an incredibly well-formed point of view before we reach out to any consultants. A lot of projects, a lot of developers, what they'll do is they'll have a building or a site, and they'll know that they need to have 150 rooms or whatever, and they hire their consultants, and away the consultants go with the vision. That's a way to never really have a true north for anything that happens in that project. So what we do is, God, I think our internal concept development program that Alex, Dave, and I put ourselves through. I mean, it's got to be 100 pages, and it's a lot of work. You know, it'd be like a thesis paper you'd have to write, for Cornell Graduate School for hotels. And if we don't have the time to dig in, well, we probably shouldn't be doing the project. But what that really helps with is then the vision is so well formed. Then we can go, okay, who's the branding agency that should be doing this thing that we just created? Okay, here are the three, wish list branding agencies that could really execute this well. Is it more of a hand spun type aesthetic, hand of the maker type branding that we need, or is it not? Different companies, same with interior design. AMP had a real aptitude for mid-century modern, a real curiosity and not curiosity and acumen surrounding mid-century. This was a mid-century building that we bought in Savannah. So like that kind of funneled it down to a few different groups there. Same with architects, so on and so forth. So what really helps us, and that's why we would probably not so often work with the same group, for the hotel. Because, is the next hotel going to be mid-century? No, it was in Bozeman, a much different project. We hired parts and labor design to do that one, given kind of the vision board that we honed in on. So that allows, I think, the project to, and it also resonates. It creates a resonance with the consultants too, right from the start. It gets them in a headspace, like you said earlier. Constraints, constraints breed creativity. We're giving this to them with constraints, which I think is kind of a cool differentiator for us.
As you look to the future of kind of these cities like Denver, Savannah, Bozeman, that can support and let these independent design-driven hotels flourish, what's on your radar? What's exciting you about the future for these types of hotels and these types of markets?
Yeah. So our next one, which we hope will break ground soon, is a 91 room hotel in Bozeman. We've got a site we're trying to buy from the city of Boulder in Boulder, Colorado, that would hopefully be around 100, 110, 115 room hotel. And then actually getting on a call after this to talk about Cincinnati, Ohio. We'll see where that goes. But what excites me and what I hope we can do ultimately is get more niche with our guests. If there's anything that's been a little frustrating, it's we're trying to, certainly we're leaning into cocktail anchored hospitality. Cocktails, representing, cocktails obviously, but more more so something you can put in a glass with a high degree of technical skill, for people to gather around, have good conversations. I mean, it's just a great vessel, whether it's a cup of coffee, a no ABV cocktail, a martini, whatever, bottle of wine. It's just a place, it's kind of like the hearth of a fireplace to us. So when we say cocktail anchor, that's sort of what it means. It's just a thing to get together and conversate around. But if there's one, I guess, frustration is in that we need to get better at, it's how do we do a better job finding our people? How do we do a better job finding, filling the hotel with more guests that care about what we're putting out there, and no matter how you slice it, you're going to get guests that book their room through Expedia because you were a rate on a day at a location. But we need to become better storytellers, I think, in enhancing and promoting all this technical skill and thought we put behind our cocktails, our food and beverage, our design. So what excites me is that opportunity is, okay, we know we can create it, which to me is the hard part. Now we just got to figure out a better way to get in front of all those people that really appreciate it and get more of those in the building.
And what's the biggest challenge to finding that psychographic or that type of person?
I think it's just options now. Like I said, everything is starting to look the same. How do you, I mean, it's how do you book a room? It really is what it comes down to. How does our ideal guest book their room? And there's many different ways.
And it's all about to change incredibly radically as AI really gets asymptotic, right? I mean, or parabolic. Yeah.
Yeah. The time I spend on just SEO now, so that the ChatGPT and Claude pick up certain keywords so that they can, funnel that through its recommendations. It'd take another podcast to tell you how technical this is all. I spend a lot of my time on technology nowadays. So I think we've got the artfulness side working for us with how we create things. And now it's getting it in front of the right people. Ultimately, authentic press helps you, getting a well-timed article from a trusted publication helps work its way through the algorithm to get to those types of people.
Now, I think that narrative in that story is also, it's not just the algorithm, it's also the large language model, which I guess is an algorithm, but it's like those stories that get published are so will become even more critically important with AI. Like I can't even get my head around how to, like SEO is going to change in like the most incredible way or ways, if it isn't already. And I just can't even get my head around how to tap into that. Cause if you ask an AI model, hey, I'm going to Denver, where are the best places to go stay? You get 3 or 4 options. I don't even know where that comes from. And your search, the output is way limited than a Google page as well. So it's like, it's really a tremendous challenge upcoming, if not already here, for hotel owners and operators.
And you need time, you just need to be open for a while for these language learning models to assign credibility to you. But yeah, I mean, as you know, it's influencers, it's articles, it's reviews. I mean, it's a million different things. It's a highly competitive world to get on page 1 for Google. I think travel agents is those are coming back in ways that I wouldn't have thought years ago. Getting in with the right travel agent. Yeah. Fora is great. I think there's going to be more of that coming up. So we're now starting to align with more companies that like are genuinely interested in what our story and what our differentiators are, which is exciting to me.
I think Fora is really cool because it's almost like the way that they've done their travel advisors. It's almost like a new kind of Tupperware party, right? It's like you get all these people in their communities creating they have these analog relationships. And then if you can tap into that, I think they're really scaling like crazy, right? They've really figured something out very special. I should talk to them.
Yeah, I could get you a contact. We just got rolling with Municipal Grand in Fora. Yeah, it's a cool model. It's been a nice onboarding process. So, me as a business owner, it's not enough just to create something that you're proud of and that guests love. If you can't get it out there beyond the great articles and all that, it takes a while to scale and grow. So I don't know. It's a fun opportunity, fun problem.
It's like the field of dreams model is dying. If you build it, they will come, right? You got to do so much more now. You can't just build that baseball diamond in the middle of a cornfield, or maybe you can, but then you need to sustain it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
All right. So I know we'll start wrapping up soon, but okay, you were going to tell the Dave story. Like, how did you meet Dave?
The Ramble Hotel, and you've obviously been. I mean, I think what makes it unique is that we put a big cocktail bar in the lobby. I mean, that is the lobby. If you're a hotel guest that walks into that room 5:00 on a Friday night, there's a host, not a front desk agent, waiting to greet you. And you look around and there's candles on the tables, and the lights are dimmed, and it's a vibe. I mean, it's you're walking into a really crowded, energetic room. And as the night gets, if you're checking in at 9:00, it's a dimly lit room. I mean, you might have a hard time finding the front desk. So almost to a fault, we leaned into, when you walk into the Ramble Hotel, you likely won't know it's a hotel. And that's going to be a win. If we can create a space that it's filled with locals and the hotel check-in might not be so obvious, that's a win. So anyway, I wanted that for this project, and that's how we designed it. And we had a group that we were working with in Denver that ultimately fell through in like the final hour, 2 months before we were about to break ground. This group that I had assembled to help operate the food and beverage here just fell apart. So our construction loan was now in default because we didn't have an anchor food and beverage team to run this. And we're scrambling for like, well, what do we do? I mean, this whole thing is predicated on this super vibrant lobby experience. And I went home at night as the deal fell through, and I was super stressed because I just thought it was dead. There was no one else in Denver that could really pull this off in my summation. So it was kind of like, well, shit, this doesn't really work anymore. I certainly wasn't going to run it at that point. Just the hotel was enough of a risk. Needed a food and beverage partner. So I went home, and I was,
after you wiped the tears from your eyes?
After I wiped the tears, I was a little stressed, and went home, and I opened the Death & Co. cocktail book because I wanted to know how they cut their vermouth to make a Manhattan. It's 10 years ago. I was really into Manhattans. And I was flipping through, I made my drink, and I sat down and talked to my then fiance, and what am I going to do? And she said, you should call those guys.
Oh my God. That's the biggest return on investment for that cocktail book ever.
Right. Yeah. So that opened my mind to, okay, I got to get out of my Denver mindset. Denver was at an interesting phase where, it was sort of that fiercely local thing for a while, which really created some awesome momentum in Denver, but at an intersection where quality was starting to matter more too. So it wasn't just about DIY. It was like, well, the tastes are evolving. So reach out to those guys represented, okay, this should be a national search. So I had a list of about 5 different groups, but Dave was one of the first one I emailed. And he always jokes, I just wrote in the subject, Denver location, at 8 question marks. And he wrote back, and the rest is history, away we went with that. But that they are who I wanted. Ultimately, I just wasn't thinking that big. And it resonated with Dave too, because for their second Death & Co., they had only been solicited for really like facsimiles of what they had done previously. Hey, we've got a basement bar with no windows, and you name it, city. And my pitch to them was, we've got 21-foot ceilings. We've got huge windows. We're going to do a cafe. We're going to do an outdoor rooftop garden. We're going to do room service. We're going to do events. And then the PM cocktail, your sweet spot is actually going to end up being kind of a small chunk of this global ecosystem. And I think Dave, likes a good challenge. So that fired him up, and Alex as well.
Well, I wish you so much luck on your Cincinnati call and all the other ones. If people wanted to learn more about you or Midnight Auteur or your hotels, what's a good way for them to learn more?
Yeah, well, let's start with the new one. Check us out at Municipal Grand, municipalgrand.com. Our new property. I think that's if you want to see where we're at today, sort of the truest articulation of what we're trying to do. That's a really great example. More food, more of a restaurant focus in Savannah than you'd see in Denver. Also check us out at the Ramble Hotel. And then Midnight Auteur, our corporate website. Check us out at Midnight Auteur as well.
We'll put it all in there, and I'll have photos of Savannah up on the Substack when we do that. And also I'll do a link of that article I wrote about leading with the B, because that was just awesome. Thank you for giving me content at these conferences. It's awesome.
Yeah,
thank you for evangelizing. And thank you, Ryan, for being on here. It's been a long time coming. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for your passion for the industry, and you're an inspiring guy. So I love listening to your podcast, and whenever you call and connecting with you, it's you're a great advocate for what we're doing.
Well, I'm a big believer and a super fan. So keep up the good work. And to all of our listeners, without you, we wouldn't be talking to awesome people like Ryan and Dave, and we got to get Alex on, and Andrew, and everyone, the whole family. We're all together. So don't forget to like, subscribe, pass it along, and we'll catch you next time.